Remember when we talked about, speaking of drugs, Florida Governor Rick Scott having this mandatory drug testing of people who receive, people who are on welfare, et cetera, but of course not of himself.
Mm-hmm. Or any other person in office.
It's been ruled unconstitutional by a U.S. district judge named Ursula Ungaro, who ruled that suspicionless drug testing for state workers violates the Fourth Amendment ban on unreasonable search and seizure. We had a suspicion that this was going to happen, didn't we?
Yeah, I think it was pretty clear.
Scott had suspended the order after it was challenged by the ACLU and the American Federation of State, Court, and Municipal Employees, which represents a lot of the state workers in Florida. What's incredible is that some early numbers that I read about this, and I apologize, I don't have the exact citation in front of me, reference that in the early testing, about 2% of those randomly tested who were on welfare but this was the welfare people testing, not the state worker. About 2% seemed to be on drugs according to the tests, which was significantly lower than the 8 to 9% of the Florida population that's actually estimated to be on drugs. Right. Hell of a testing program. Makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Right. Well, when you're completely broke, how do you afford those drugs?
Interesting. The executive order does not identify a concrete danger that must be addressed by suspicionless drug testing of state employees, and the governor shows no evidence of a drug use problem at the covered agencies, that's from the opinion of the judge who ruled this unconstitutional. This is the second constitutional rebuke of Rick Scott's drug testing. Do you correlate this with the TSA, with warrantless wiretapping and invasive TSA pat-downs, which I know you have no problem with, or do you think that this is a little bit separate? Like, do you see this as part of the umbrella of the kind of so-called police state that people say we're moving in the direction of?
The drug testing without suspicion?
Yeah. Like, how do you compare invasive TSA pat-downs, which you've indicated you have no problem with suspicionless drug testing?
I mean, I think they're two completely different things. Like, again, we go back to the safety issue. The drug testing really has nothing to do with safety and just seems completely frivolous.
You could argue that it does have to do with safety. I mean, I don't know. People could make that argument. What do you think, Natan? I mean, those two combined with warrantless wiretapping, is this all under the same umbrella of the so-called police state that we see a lot of people like Alex Jones talking about, that we even can go back and see 1984, George Orwell, Brave New World, Aldous Huxley. Is this all under the same thing?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think the TSA thing in and of itself is an example of a police state. I mean, it seems pretty logical that we want to have security at an airport.
Okay.
To be able to get on a plane and feel safe, there should be some sort of a method to prevent, a hijacking from taking place.
Okay.
So we could discuss how exactly that should be done while maintaining, civil rights laws.
So you see it as different things?
I do.
And Lewis, you also do see it as different things?
I do, yeah.
I do too. Just because we don't think the TSA is effective doesn't mean that it's the same type of thing as suspicionless drug testing from a Republican governor in Florida, which, as we know, is brought on by a number of stereotypes about the people that are on welfare. I mean, we can't ignore that.
Yeah, and it seems like this is something that was originally trying to save the government money, trying to save Florida money, what have you.
Yeah, of course, it's more government.
Yeah, more government, and in the end, considering how few of the people who are on welfare are actually using drugs, I would argue that it could end up costing them more money than they'd save
unquestionably
by denying those people welfare.